Good morning, EGF members, EGF friends, other people in the exhibition and event industry. Really great to have you all with us today. It's really wonderful that we are discussing the topic of AI on everybody's mind, and importantly, digital sustainability. So as an organization, we've covered a lot of topics from waste, from water, from venue, from carbon footprint, but we've never discussed this issue, and it's a very burning issue, and it's becoming more and more important. So really just wonderful to have Gavin Burgess with us today. Gavin, thank you very much for agreeing to share your knowledge and insight on this topic. Also, a big thanks to Lynn for coordinating, our secretariat for coordinating today, and for Pippa for promoting this event. And to all our associate members, EXA, AXO, SACI, who the various member PCO Alliance, other members of our associates who've promoted this under their platform. Thank you very much. It's interesting that we've got over 100 attendees. It's a record for us, and it just shows you how important this topic is. The Event Greening Forum is an organization which promotes greening in events. We just work in business events and consumer exhibitions, and it's really grown from strength to strength. Just wonderful to see how mainstream greening has become. So you're welcome to join us today. If you want to find out more information, please go to our website, www.eventgreening.co.za, and you can find a wealth of information. And two things which we've done differently this year is we've introduced certification, and we will be rolling out with that within our industry. We've got some qualified certifiers, and we're also going to we've created the Green Database again from 2018, and we're going to be promoting that this year. So there's a lot to look forward to from an event greening point of view from our organization. Just in terms of this talk, please put your questions in the chat. So the platform doesn't allow questions from the audience live, but put your questions in the chat, and I'm sure Gavin will answer them appropriately. Also, lastly, to thank our sponsors, Scan Display, for sponsoring today, and for the Solutions Company, both patron members. Thank you very much for your support. And Brett, thanks for your support as well. In all we do a lot of work with you, and you really help us as an organization in terms of AV and digital stuff that we do. So without further ado, I'm going to just introduce Gavin, and we'll hand over to him. I think just firstly, it's a huge honor and a privilege, Gavin, for me to actually introduce you. I've known you for 22 years, can you believe it? And Gavin was actually an ex-employee of mine from 2004 to 2006 at Scan in the IT role, and then he left and briefly did something else, and then after that he started his IT consulting technology partners, and it's really grown from strength to strength. And it's just wonderful to see, Gavin. It was wonderful to see at the EXA Awards 2 weeks ago, where you won Best IT Supplier in our industry. Really beautiful. And I think just on you as a person, there's some great qualities that you have. You're very courageous, you're very hardworking. I know we can always get hold of you at any time of the day. I don't want to make it harder for you, because then everybody's going to try and get hold of you on a Sunday at 8 o'clock in the morning. But thank you for that. You're very, very committed, and most importantly, very service-minded. I think the most impressive thing about you is just your commitment to sustainability and your passion for sustainability. And it's just been great having your involvement in various ways at EGF. I know you've been involved in the Green Database, you've been involved in our website, and thank you for all the special rates that you've given us. I'm not saying you're going to give other members special rates, but thank you very much for supporting the EGF in what we've achieved. We've achieved so much, and a lot of that's thanks to your wonderful support that you've given us. So Gavin, thank you very much. Welcome. And over to you, Gavin Burgess.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you for such a lovely introduction. Gee, I'm blown away.
It's true. It's true.
Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. So, good morning and welcome, everybody. I'd like to start by thanking the Event Greening Forum for this wonderful opportunity to speak with you today, where we will be exploring AI and digital sustainability in February 2026. It's important to establish that this talk is in February 2026 because technology changes at such a rapid pace, it is actually impossible to predict where we will be at in the future. So in this talk, I'm going to make the invisible visible. We're going to take a look at what AI in the cloud means in the physical world. We're going to take a look globally through a South African lens because sustainability starts at home and depends heavily on where home is. And lastly, we will look at how events professionals can harness AI and still do it sustainably. I'm going to stay away from tech jargon so that this talk is easy to listen to and it's something that everybody in the audience understands. But if you have a question, pop it in the Q&A and I will gladly answer it. There's a lot of exciting content to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so why a global perspective? We're actually going to use a South African lens to look at technology around the world. Technology is often marketed as frictionless and universal, but that's not actually the case. We need to see the risk and protective factors for ourselves so that we can weigh up whether the use of AI and other digital technologies are actually beneficial. The costs of technology, and I don't just mean the rand value, the costs are not universal, and neither are the benefits. So in the boom of what we're calling AI, there are infrastructure, energy, water, supply chain, extraction, all kinds of demands in specific places globally. But these demands don't, or often they don't exist in a few concentrated places where the benefits are seen somewhere else. So what happens is you have mines in one place, but you have consumers of smartphones in another place. So South Africa is digitally engaged. South Africa is one of the most digitally engaged countries in the world. We spend as much as 9.5 hours online per day, and that's compared to Europe, which only spends about 5.5 hours per day online. South Africa is actively engaged online. That means we spend most of our time actively searching and researching data. The rest of the world is more passive. They use their online time listening to music and watching videos. However, our digital lives are constrained. We deal with excessive costs and we deal with excessive barriers to access to technology and access to the internet. And of course, we have a very unreliable electrical grid. So we also deal with a problem which is an inequality in terms of digital literacy. These problems force us to face difficult trade-offs in terms of jobs, education, and business in general. So when talking about digital sustainability, we need to consider the environmental footprint of digital systems. So these govern the domains of electricity, water, raw materials, chemicals, and waste. We need to consider the social footprint, who benefits, who is excluded, what harms or risks are communities faced with. And then there's the governance footprint. Here we're talking about transparency, accountability, and the rules that shape the incentives that we have for interacting with technology. And importantly, sustainability is not about using less. It's about using appropriately. And in technology, that means designing systems that reduce harm across the entire life cycle of what we call computers. Okay, so when thinking about AI and sustainability, there are 4 basic steps in the life cycle of technology that need to be considered. So firstly, innovation. And this is the part of the life cycle where ideas are shifted into reality. It's where concepts meet their creators. It's why AI is growing so fast. And it's about the incentives that are put into AI growing so fast. Secondly, we have production. This is the physical manufacturing supply chain. Here we need to consider the raw materials, chemicals, and factories that make computer chips. Thirdly, we have the use or the implementation of technology. So we'll talk about data centers, electricity use, cooling water, and the scale of literally billions of AI prompts happening per day. And lastly, we need to consider the disposal of electronic waste. So at best, we can reuse and repurpose computers, but it is very difficult to recycle them. It is possible to take computers apart into much smaller pieces and to repurpose or reuse the individual components. But largely when it comes to AI, AI is outstripping where we are at in technology. So the faster servers are being created, the faster the technology improves, and the faster those servers are being decommissioned and ultimately landing up in the rubbish dumps. So there's a massive turnover of hardware and e-waste globally. This view, this view from cradle to grave matters because a lot of AI discussions focus only on electricity. The story is much broader than electricity. Right, so what is data? Data, whichever way you want to say it. I tend to say data, that's just who I am, but it really doesn't matter. It's the same thing. So data is any piece of information. Typically, we group information together in the form of documents, spreadsheets, photos, or video. Data can also be a simple a password. It could be a sentence. It could be a paragraph. It could be a spreadsheet full of numbers. There's lots of different ways that we can say that something is data. Data can be manually or electronically stored. So it's important to understand when we talk about data, it could be written down and not necessarily stored in a computer. So when you're busy doing manual calculations, you've got your calculator and you're scribbling in your notebook, everything that you're doing, everything you're recording is also data. And the reason for that is that you might be able to use it with a purpose in the future. So this means that it is impossible to quantify all the data in the world. However, we can measure electronic data. So electronic data is measured in what we call bytes. Very simply, there are 1,000 bytes in a megabyte, there's 1,000 megabytes in a gigabyte, and there's 1,000 gigabytes in a terabyte. So those terms you'll hear often, megabyte, gigabyte, and terabyte, and so on. There are also, there's different definitions when it comes to measuring data. So a measurement of data can be the size. So that could be, for example, the size of a file, or it could be the amount of data transferred. So that would be your mobile data, for example. So we can encapsulate this, we can make a statement and encapsulate this by saying, I sent a 50 megabyte file using part of my 1 gigabyte mobile data. Okay. All right, so the data or bread choice. For a lot of South Africans, 23 million of them, in fact, it is a choice between data or bread. They earn less than 1,300 Rand a month, and a gig of data costs on average 50 to 90 Rand. The smaller the data bundle, the more it costs. So people are paying up to 100 Rand for a gig of data. 13.3 million South Africans do not have access to the internet at all, not even on their smartphones. 13.3 million South Africans, no internet. So of these, 5.8 million are children in what we call data poor households. These children attend 17,000 schools. So, and for context, that's 17,000 out of 23,000 schools that don't have access to the internet. Only 6,000 schools in South Africa have access to the internet. And to give you an idea, by the year 2030, 90% of jobs will require digital literacy, and these children are being left behind. So after those are the facts of South Africa, so let's chat about where data is stored. So ordinarily, data is stored on the computer or device that you're using. This could be in the form of a saved file, or it could be what we call saved in RAM. So that's the part of your document which you would lose if you lost electricity. Copies of your data can be stored on flash drives or external hard drives or some other means. But these days, most data lives in the cloud. So we've got to define that. We've got to say, what is the cloud? Right, so the cloud is a broad term that defines groups of interconnected computers and servers in big buildings called data centers across the globe. That means you could be sitting in South Africa, but your actual document is in Germany or the United States. Data centers are massive buildings. They house thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of physical servers. These servers contain microchips, and those microchips come from mines, chemical processing, and ultra-precise manufacturing. Data centers, rather, pose a very big challenge to sustainability. Calling it the cloud can actually hide the fact that it is physical infrastructure with physical impacts, including water and biodiversity impacts. All data servers need 100% uptime in terms of electricity. That means that data centers all have backup generators, and these backup generators run on fossil fuels. Even if a data center has green and renewable energy, they still have backup generators in case the electricity fails. And data centers need to be kept cool. I can tell you from being inside them, it is very cold inside a data center. And if it wasn't cold, the computers and servers would eventually fail. So apart from generators, over 50% of data centers are actually air conditioners. On the screen, there's a picture on the left of Terraco. Terraco is a data center in Isando, Johannesburg. It is one of the biggest data centers in South Africa. Picture on the right is what it looks like inside. So on the left of that photo, you can see all the big servers. On the right, you can see generators and other electrical equipment. So surprisingly, the data that you might know, such as your spreadsheets and your documents in the cloud, are not hosted in South Africa. They're mostly hosted overseas. And that is why when there is a large-scale internet outage, most communications platforms experience a problem. So we've all had that. We've had WhatsApp go down. We've had internet outages in South Africa over the past several years. There have been days with no internet in certain areas. It is a problem. And primarily the problem is because of cost. So simply put, it's cheaper to host data overseas than it is locally in South Africa. It's all a cost exercise. So what is artificial intelligence, or AI? So AI stands for artificial intelligence. It's part of what we call machine learning. It has a very long, complicated, and much debated history. If you look back through history, you'll see examples dating back to the 1700s of people attempting to get automated machines to work, to do things like calculations. Some of them were simply theorized. With the Industrial Revolution, these machines came into being. The term artificial intelligence was first used in 1956, although earlier examples of what could be considered artificial intelligence have been seen since 1950. So early examples of AI were large machines that could play games like checkers or chess. They were intelligent because these machines were not programmed on how to win the game. They learned how to play the game itself. And these machines did this by memorizing moves, adjusting responses, and performing A/B testing against what its next move is going to be. And importantly, they were considered intelligent because they were able to outperform humans. That is to say that a machine could beat a human at a game of checkers without being programmed on how to do that. Right, so what is understood as AI today? We need to understand that the term AI means many things, but in popular culture, AI is the interface that humans use to talk to computers. It is based on data, whether that be a prompt such as, "What shall I have for dinner?" or whether that data is complex analytical data such as financial forecasts and other data. So just remember that what we're dealing with when we're talking about AI in context of this presentation is we're dealing with a small segment of AI which humans are exposed to every day. It runs primarily in the cloud. You do get AI that exists on edge devices such as smartphones. Other forms of AI exist locally on computers and devices used to access technology. Typically, AI runs on computer hardware, and this computer hardware has a life cycle. It relies on electricity, whether it is fossil fuels or renewable energy, and it requires a lot of water for cooling servers. It also, AI produces an output on an end user device such as your laptop or your smartphone. And this process of giving an input prompt and an output response, we typically refer to as generative AI. That's the subset of AI that we're talking about today. Okay. The costs of AI. When we talk about costs in technology, we're not necessarily talking about the rand value. What we attempt to achieve is to quantify the balance between positives and negatives. That is the balance between the risk and the protective factors. It's not just about the monetary cost. When we talk about the costs of AI, we're referring to the fact that computer hardware must be manufactured, and computer hardware has a finite lifespan. There are research and development costs, and these include labor costs. There is mining for raw materials, and this comes with environmental impacts, often such as dangerous byproducts. Then there's the gamble that we take around packaging. Will the packaging that we deliver a product in actually be recycled or not? There's the cost of delivery from the manufacturer down the channels and through to the end user. And most importantly, there is the disposal of technology when it is no longer fit for purpose. This is not to say that hardware can't be used again, but the reality is that technology improves at such a pace that before the current version is produced, the next version is already being developed. In computer science, we often refer to what's called Moore's law, and that's the observation that the number of transistors in microchips doubles every 2 years. So essentially, transistors are one of the smallest parts of a computer chip. Some are so small that can only be seen under a microscope. In fact, scientists today have gotten transistors down to the size of 1.5 atoms. That's really, really tiny. So as you can imagine, the smaller the transistor, the more computing power can be packed into one microchip. The manufacturing process is so precise that over a 50-year period, and that's what's on your screen, microchips went from having about 1,000 transistors to over 50 billion transistors in a single chip. Moore's law is therefore an observation as well as a projection of a historical trend. This is important because Moore's law can be applied to pretty much anything in computer science, and it's a really good way of understanding how quickly AI is developing. Okay, so remember we're talking about generative AI, which is a subset of AI, and the growth of generative AI has been explosive worldwide. We need to understand why that is. There are 4 key driving factors, and the factors are, firstly, the perceived benefits of using AI. It feels like magic and it saves time. The advancements in computing efficiency as a result of AI, chips and systems keep improving, as we've just said. Then there's the capacity for corporates to innovate while using AI. Companies can deploy new systems globally and almost instantly anywhere in the world. And we have very limited laws and regulations for the use of AI, and this is a global problem. Because there is an unmitigated and persistent increase in the demand for AI, we need to look at the fact that every benefit carries a shadow cost. And in talking about sustainability, that is meeting the needs of today without compromising the needs of the future, we need to look at both the benefits as well as the shadow costs. All right, so when interacting with generative AI, a user will enter a simple prompt. So let's take an example and pretend we're prompted, "What shall I have for dinner tonight?" The AI might make some suggestions, let's say for 5 different recipes, and they all sound delicious. You choose one, but you may realize that you don't have all the ingredients for that particular recipe. You then go back and interact with the AI again and inform it what ingredients you actually do have. The AI then refines and adapts the recipes to suit you, or it comes up with a completely different alternative. So again, it's as if by magic, you've solved the problem in a very short space of time. It feels like you have your own personal assistant. There are many other examples of how generative AI can be used. Some prompts could be summarize this text or write an email response. It's very important to understand that although a human could have come up with the same answer, the perceived benefit is the time it saves that it would take to research that answer. And that's why the AI's responses seem far better than anything a human could have come up with. So in the first factor driving AI growth, we have the sense of mystery and illusion that we enter a simple prompt and we get a result based on that prompt. But the result masks the fact that there is very little human thought that went into the answer. And the cost here I'm calling unjustified optimism. And this matters because ease of use changes behavior. When something feels free, we use more of it. When something feels instant, we ask more, we try more, we outsource more. But we have no visibility into the environmental impacts of generative AI, so we don't have a built-in incentive to reduce the use unnecessarily, or reduce unnecessary use rather. Okay, so this is not necessarily a bad thing, it's just a fact. And sustainability starts with acknowledging this rebound effect. The gains in efficiency can increase the total consumption. If demand grows faster than efficiency improves, you're going to land up with a higher consumption of computers and computer components. Okay, so factor 2, simply put, as the demand for more complex AI tools increases, the demand for computing efficiency increases as well. And here's the sustainability twist. Efficiency improvements don't automatically reduce total environmental impact rather. If efficiency makes computing cheaper, then we often do more computing. This results in the continuous manufacture of more advanced computer components, which we've discussed. So I'd like to chat for a moment about how computer parts are manufactured. We went briefly into what transistors are. So we first need to consider what goes into a computer. There are different components. There are microchips, there are printed circuit boards, there's displays, batteries, there's various metals, and of course plastics. So microchips and printed circuit boards are made out of silicon, copper, gold, and other precious metals such as palladium and silver. The computer itself, and this holds true for any type of computer, even a server or a smartphone, it has a case made out of aluminium or other steel and hardened plastics. Components inside the computer require tin, nickel, and zinc. Glass and ceramics are used to make the displays. Cobalt, lithium, and graphite are used to make batteries. And rare earth minerals such as magnets are used in speakers. All of these are raw minerals that have to be mined out of the earth. From mining, raw minerals are concentrated, smelted, refined into producing foils, powders, other chemicals, And the mining process uses petrochemicals and solvents. This is just the mining process, and it has harsh effects on the environment as well as communities. All mining produces dangerous waste and byproducts, and the process causes soil erosion, and causes strain on the air and strain on water systems. Mining communities and mine workers worldwide are subject to very poor working conditions, and in some cases slavery. After mining has taken place, components need to be manufactured. So without going into the manufacture process in detail, it's necessary to highlight that manufacture involves water waste and the use of dangerous chemicals that have greenhouse gas emissions. Computer parts are then tested, and there is a lot of waste of manufactured computer parts that are just simply discarded if they don't perform to the specified standards. The result here is extreme environmental consequences. Okay, so AI is not only a model, it's an ecosystem. It consists of cloud platforms, microchips, data, pipelines, user interfaces, and various electronic products. When a new AI model launches, it can be integrated into Office tools, so things like customer service, marketing, search, translation, and all at a global scale and very fast. So corporates with buying power have access to more advanced technologies. Their employees lean on AI for innovation, and this ultimately results in a disinvestment in human capital in the long run. So you might be asking whether your job is safe or whether a robot will soon do the work that you already do. The research shows that AI is moving so quickly that this is actually impossible to predict. It's more productive to expose yourself to available technologies as much as you can so that you can learn to control the technologies that exist and the technologies of the future. Okay, growth in the field of AI is actually not justified, nor is it kept in check. Globally, there are very limited laws and regulations for the implementation and expansion of the use of AI technologies. We don't have consistent mandatory reporting on things like AI-specific energy use, AI-specific water use, supply chain impacts, or any accounting for the full life cycle. There is a grim reality here that the faster data centers expand, the more we are locking in the use of fossil fuels in the long term. So innovation is racing ahead of measurement and accountability. And that's the innovation story. Huge demand plus rapid scale and weak visibility. This means that AI companies can grow unhindered, and the results are dangerous environmental impacts. On your screen, there is a picture of xAI's data center in Memphis in the United States. It has 35 gas turbines used to generate electricity, all of which release methane gas into the atmosphere. And that's just an example of many. So in computing, we talk about cradle to grave, so beginning and end of a computer. AI has a supply chain footprint before you even put a prompt into it. So here's a short cradle to grave outline of a typical AI relevant device or server component. So we've spoken about raw minerals extraction, that's silicon, copper, gold, tin, nickel, cobalt, lithium, and other rare earth minerals. There's the refining and chemical processing. This is very high energy consumption. It has toxic byproducts and extreme water use. There's the manufacturing, which are your semiconductor fabrications that rely on extremely complex steps. They rely on specialty gases, solvents, and ultra-pure water. There's the assembly and distribution. So here, global logistics and the carbon emissions of transport come into play. Then there's the use phase. So this is while computer components are in use. There is electricity and cooling water used in the data centers. At end of life, we only have the options to reuse or partially recycle or to dispose. We don't have all the R's of sustainability available to us when it comes to computer parts. So this causes significant loss of materials, and it has a massive pollution risk. It's a myth to think that electronic devices can be recycled simply because the components of one device are not necessarily compatible with a newer device. Typically, your old smartphone either gets kept as a spare, gets given away, or ultimately lands up in the trash. So even after computers are stripped down to their bare basics, most of the residual components can't be recycled, and they're just discarded. Okay, so there's a sustainability trap that's happening here, and it's to do with speed and churn. So speed, the pace at what it's going, at what AI is going, and the churn is the rate at which AI is turning over time. So generative AI has a very short shelf life. New models are released constantly, which means the energy and resources used to train older models loses value very quickly. That model churn drives more training runs. So training is the phase of machine learning where a new AI model is exposed to various sets of data and it learns from that data. There's more inference demand. Inference is when the AI model comes up with answers to a prompt and has to make inferences based on its past learnings in order to formulate that response. There's more hardware procurement, and there's more e-waste pressure over time. So even if computer chips get more efficient, the rapid replacement cycles can still worsen the total impact. Okay, the speed at which data centers grow. So now we get to the part that most people have heard about, which is energy. The International Energy Agency, the IEA, reports that data centers accounted for about 1.5% of the global electricity consumption in 2024. That's about 415 terawatt hours. Global data center electricity consumption is projected to roughly double to about 945 terawatt hours by 2030. Data centers are among the fastest growing sources of emissions. And this expansion can drive both global emissions and local air pollution depending on how power is supplied. So the electricity story is not theoretical. It's now become a significant challenge for governments worldwide simply to build more power plants. And AI adds a multiplier to this growth. AI is not the only reason that data centers grow, but it's a powerful multiplier to the growth. AI training is computationally intense. AI inference scales with users. So inference is the AI's formulation of a response to your prompt. And as users increase the intensity of their prompts, so does the inference scale. After AI is being embedded into everyday tools. So it's not just your chatbot that you're talking to anymore. Now you're using it in search, you're using it online, you're probably using it and you don't even realize that you're using it. So we should ask the question, we shouldn't only ask how much does training cost, so training of the AI models, how much does that cost? We should be asking what happens when everybody uses AI every day. Okay, so water, the overlooked constraint. People think of digital as clean. But cooling computer systems is a physical process, and water is often central to cooling. Chilled water is used widely for data center cooling, which creates about 2 liters of water per kilowatt hour consumed during cooling. Water demand can threaten local supplies. Projected global AI training could account for billions of cubic meters of water withdrawal in the coming years. So the sustainability question becomes local. Where is the data center built? Is the area water stressed? Who competes for that water? Is it households, agriculture, ecosystems, etc.? And this is why our global perspective matters. The same AI query can have very different implications depending on location and infrastructure. Okay, local air pollution and fossil fuel lock-in. It's an uncomfortable reality. If data centers are powered by fossil generation, especially new gas infrastructure, then AI-driven growth can create local and other pollution impacts, not only climate impacts. This is a governance and planning question as much as it is a technology question. We have the measurement gap. We still struggle to measure AI impacts cleanly because companies don't always disclose AI-specific energy and water use. The supply chains are complex. Life cycle boundaries are debated. So there is an argument for more comprehensive contextual measurement because right now we are not keeping pace with the speed of development. So we have strong directional evidence, but incomplete transparency. All right. Okay, so let's shift our focus back to something more tangible. What can we do in the events industry? Let's turn this into practical guidance. So start by accepting that any use of AI is not green. The goal is not never use AI. The goal is use the right-sized AI for the task. Use AI where it genuinely creates value. Avoid it where it's just a habit or a novelty or a waste. Choose the smallest tool that does the job. Design workflows that reduce repeated unnecessary computation. That's important for programmers. And the idea here is to match the perceived benefit to the real full footprint, understanding that anything you do with AI uses energy, water, and materials and creates churn of computing components that will probably never be recycled. Right, so let's chat about 10 practical things that professionals in the events industry can implement without needing to touch the back end of an AI model. So firstly, set an AI use policy for your team. Define what AI is allowed, for example, drafting and summarizing, and what requires caution, such as sensitive data and biased decision-making. Number 2, prefer small tasks over big prompts. So shorter, clearer prompts reduce the number of times you have to retry, and it reduces longer outputs. Fewer instructions given to a computer means less computing power consumption. Number 3, stop asking AI things that you could template. If it's the same thing you do every month or every year, make a template and reuse it. Next, use AI as a second pass, not the first. So ideally, you should never use AI to write correspondence because the result is highly impersonal and it lacks the human touch. But if you must, in your communications, write a rough human outline first, then use AI to refine it. This cuts out the backwards and forwards prompting that happens. Number 5, default to smaller models when you can. Not every task needs the most powerful system. This is one of the cleanest ways to curb your carbon footprint. Okay. Next, reduce always-on AI features in attendee workflows. So here, if you're adding a chatbot, don't make it the first interface for everything. Make it optional. Ask AI vendors for transparency. Request from your AI vendors environmental reporting on energy, water, and model lifecycle practices. The market shifts when buyers ask. Number 8, extend hardware lifetimes. Don't refresh laptops just because a new AI tool exists. Hardware churn is part of the footprint story. Next, design digital inclusion into your event. Use low data options, downloadable schedules, offline-friendly resources, and so on. And number 10, measure what you can. Even simple internal tracking helps. The number of AI-generated emails, the number of long outputs, the number of chatbot sessions. You can't you can't manage what you can't measure. AI is a real-world supply chain and a real-world utility. Use it like electricity or water. Use it purposefully and not casually. Okay, so AI can help solve real problems. So I think climate modeling, efficiency optimization, education support, smarter logistics, and so on. But AI also has direct risks such as electricity growth, water stress, local pollution, and supply chain impacts that we've discussed. So digital sustainability is not anti-innovation, it's pro-responsibility. It asks the questions, what is the full life cycle cost? Who bears that cost? And is the benefit worth it? Thank you very much for your time today. I'm looking forward to engaging with your questions. Let's have a look. So we have only questions from Chad. So Chad says, the biggest challenge to reduce demand is competitive advantage. Absolutely. Gavin, I understand what you're saying, but again, the challenge is time and financial constraints. Absolutely. So this is the whole thing about AI is the more you use it, the more time it saves you, so the more you're going to use it. It's not realistic. We use AI more and more, absolutely, as it saves time and money. It absolutely does save time and money, Chad, but to what environmental cost? To now set the point you are requesting in a way defeating the objects of promoting AI. So I don't promote AI at all. I don't think that AI is green technology. I don't think it should be used outside of use cases where you have a direct benefit that doesn't have a high environmental cost. Okay, that's all the open questions. Oh, Chad says, what are the alternatives? Well, Chad, technology is massive, so there are many alternatives, but we're talking specifically about generative AI. If you want to talk more about proprietary AI that is used within an organization, you'll find bigger corporates have got their own in-house bodies producing their own software for use in-house, and there they can control how much energy and electricity and water and so on is actually employed for those alternatives. Quentin says, I have a big concern for our economic sustainability because if the most conservative projections are correct, we will be facing reductions in our consumer base. Okay, Quentin, I need more context, but yes, I think yes, if you're dealing with conservative projections and facing reductions in consumer base, this is a result of AI technology. It's a result of technology in general. Okay, that looks like all the questions that we have. John?
Gavin, I think you've given us a lot of food
there's more coming in
this morning. No problem. Let's answer the questions that are coming in, I think, as we go along.
Okay, so Al-Bakwi says, if AI is completely removed, what would be the best case scenario and what would be the worst case scenario? Because that's a really challenging question. I think that AI is a natural progression of technology. If you have a look at the history and if you have a look at what AI attempts to achieve, it's a natural progression. Technology was always going to go in this direction. So it's difficult to say if we had to remove it altogether, we would be stuck the way we did things 20 years ago. What is the best case scenario? Well, I think that the best case scenario is that humans maintain their control over AI. That's very important. Steve says, what's the most efficient way of using AI on marketing our company? Okay, so the most efficient way, Steve, would be to have a list of objectives that you want to achieve and make sure that your AI prompts are aligned with those objectives. That will give you the most efficient output. Brendan says, what do you feel is more important, greening and ethical use policies in place within business regards to AI? Brendan, that's a good question. I think that greening and ethical use is equally important because if we take a look at the energy that is used to create data centers or to build data centers, for example, there are data centers that have got renewable energy. They do exist. Many of Google's platforms are carbon neutral. So I think that that is a domain that needs to be considered. And then the other domain is definitely, like you say, the ethics. So we have to have transparency, we have to have accountability. We have to have these big companies like OpenAI, XAI, Google, Microsoft, and so on. They need to be reporting on their electricity use and on their water use and their global carbon footprint. Kio says, do you have any clients using AI? And if so, what is your take on it? I have got clients who use AI primarily for data purposes, so data analytical purposes. So they look at financial data, they look at statistics and trends. I have got clients who are using AI to create social media prompts, which I think is an efficient use of AI because it requires very little computational power. My take on it is, again, you should use the tool if it makes environmental sense to do so. Chad says, we are using AI daily and we are investing more and more into AI, including our reservation systems and accounts. Chad, that's great. If those are good use cases for you, then well done. Well done on embracing the technology.
Okay, for now, I think that's you've answered most of the questions, and we'll go back to any questions, Gavin, if they should come in. My question to you, though, and as the Event Greening Forum, so this is coming now from our perspective as the Event Greening Forum and the promoting of green events specifically. We've always been told that one should be using more technology on events and on exhibition stands. So, for example, at an event, we get told, instead of printing programs or menus on tables or table layouts, use QR codes, use screens to display this, use screens to display that. And the same thing on exhibition booths. More and more, it's been advised that one should use technology, tablets for downloading advertising material, PDF documents, rather than printed material and handing that out to visitors to your stands or delegates attending an event. My question to you is, having heard what you said this morning, and I know you've been speaking about AI, but I mean, obviously technology and screens talk to the screens that one uses at these events, or as I said, QR codes for downloading PDF documents and advertising and marketing material. Should we be doing that, or should we be going back to using paper? Because if you're talking about at least paper, if it lands up in a landfill, will degrade, whereas the components of a computer or a device that we are using, let alone the process that you've just explained to us with all the generating capacities in the cloud and in the technology centers, that's all stuff that we've not thought about in this process. So I guess what I'm trying to ask on behalf of the members is, what is the best technology or not technology to be using at events on exhibition stands from that perspective?
Yeah, John, that's an excellent question. So the way I see it is that I like to answer in two parts. The way I see it is that you've got a scenario where decades ago we were using paper. Now we're using screens. So what comes next? So that's the first part to the answer is what comes next. And then my second part to the answer is look at the life cycle of the technology. So a screen on an exhibition stand has a very long life cycle. So you're going to use the same screen for 5, 10, maybe 15, 20 years. You'll use it again and again. And also the data that you're projecting on that screen, so your photos or your videos, those are not being generated in a data center. You're only generating that content once and loading it onto the screen once. If you were using, let's imagine a more interactive screen, perhaps a touch screen where you could chat to a chat bot on the screen. That I would say is a very bad use of AI. It's a very negative use of AI because you're going completely against greening. What you're doing is you're pulling onto your exhibition stand, you're pulling all of this computational power, and people are going to mess around with it. People are not going to ask precise questions. They're going to do silly things like say, "Hello, how's it?" To see what the chatbot does. So I think it depends when you talk about technology. And I think we've got that separation in the events industries. We have the separation between technical and audiovisual and computing.
Okay, I understand that. Then the question, this fad that's going around or every now and then goes around now creating these caricatures, and I guess some of us have been guilty of doing that. What would you suggest is that in terms of using that technology and participating in these fads? Is that something that we should be doing or something that we should be avoiding at all costs?
You've got to live a little, right? So you've got to enjoy life and you've got to enjoy the technology that's available to you. I'm not saying don't use it at all. I'm just saying that when you are generating a caricature of yourself, be mindful of the fact that you are using compute resources, and these compute resources use energy, water, and they are implicated in things like mining as well. So just have it in the back of your mind. I wouldn't go and open a shop doing caricatures on AI to the public, but I don't see any problem with general curiosity.
It's just obviously the quantity of it and the time that it takes, as you say, to generate, and then obviously the computers that are obviously churning this out at a rapid speed, requiring a massive amounts of cooling and water to obviously keep them operating efficiently and without overheating, etc. So, I guess it's with everything in life. If you abuse it, it's going to be problematic. But if you use it properly, well, not in a non-abusive way, then I guess it's advantageous and can be a benefit to the purposes to which you want to use it for, rather than just playing around with it.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So,
I see there
John,
are a few more questions.
Yeah, there are a few more questions in the chat box.
Okay. Okay, Al-Bakwi says, is it possible for an individual to fully remove AI from their day-to-day life? And if it is possible, how long will the boycott of AI last? So, Al-Bakwi, I admire you for saying that. I really do, because I boycott technology at night and on the weekends, okay? Because my whole job is staring at a screen. So at night and on the weekends, I tend to put my phone away. So I think that's a really good example. There has to be a balance. I don't think that you can walk away from technology completely. You can't walk away from AI completely. But what you can do is you can know when is the right time to use it and when it's not appropriate. I don't think that there would be a global boycott of AI purely because you've got far too many companies invested in AI. You've got far too many developers, software developers, programmers, hardware manufacturers, and then you've got the likes of these massive companies like Elon Musk's company and OpenAI and all of these generative AI companies. They're not going to go away. Quentin says we need to be careful of who our customer bases are, particularly in the tourism market. where job losses are predicted in our source markets due to AI adoption. We will need to diversify our customer base away from finance, etc., to more AI resilient markets. I agree with all your negatives identified, but I believe social disruption is a greater threat to sustainability of business. Yes, and Quinton, I think that on that point of social disruption, I think that it's good for technology to shake things up a bit. I think that we can only benefit from it in the long run. Will it change what you do for a living? Probably. Probably in the next couple of decades, what you do for a living is probably going to shift. In the tourism space, I see a definite danger. There's definitely a danger in terms of the way that humans interact. But what I've always said is the business of events is about face-to-face interaction. It's about human interaction. You're never going to be able to completely replace human interaction with a screen.
I love that point, Gavin. And I think we all discovered that during COVID. Can you remember how back in the day when we weren't able to network and face each other, how we felt isolated? Whereas the minute we were allowed to open up again and host events, everybody flocked to events because they wanted and craved that human interaction. So human interaction will always be a thing, as you say, and AI and computer technology will also always be a thing. It's about creating the right balance between the two and not abusing either of them.
Mhm.
There's a
Okay,
couple of more
so
questions, and I think then we should wrap it up.
okay. Bakwe says, with the way AI has been progressing in the near future, will we still be able to regard AI as a positive thing? Bakwe, I think that given what I've highlighted today, is that there are serious environmental challenges, there's serious legal challenges, and until we iron all of that out, I'm quite neutral on the topic. But I think, yes, AI can be a positive thing. I think that it's certainly not the last technology we're going to encounter. So Chad says anything is possible. The point is, will your competitors do the same? That is the point that everybody misses. It is the same as socialism and communism. The basic principles have good intentions, but it does not take human nature into account. And then Chad goes on to say that he agrees with human interaction. You may know someone for years, but you're meeting somebody face to face and interact. It changes the dynamics of the relationship. Yes, Chad, absolutely. I think that we've got an opportunity with AI to enhance the quality of our human relationships. Yeah, okay, no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gavin. As you can see from the chat box and the Q&A session, we had an absolutely incredible session here today. I think you've definitely opened a lot of our eyes to the challenges that one faces when we use technology and AI in particular. And I think there's a lot of more research, as you say, and we need to gather a lot more information around this particular element and AI and how it affects our industry particularly. So I think it's also something when chat to Greg, when it comes to certifying green events, we need to include AI possibly as a criteria going forward for certification and events and the impact that it has on the green and sustainability of an event. So thank you very much once again, as I said, for Gavin from Technology Partners for this absolutely incredible presentation. We have recorded the session, and as soon as it's been edited, we will be posting it on our EGF website, linked to the EGF YouTube channel, so you'll be able to go back and refer to this presentation when you would like to, and also to share it with people in your teams. So if they hadn't had a chance to watch it today, they'll get the chance to see it on demand through our YouTube channel, and we'll let you know when it's up and ready on our channels for you to view. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you very much to the sponsors for bringing this amazing webinar to our screens this morning. Thank you very much to Scan Display and to the Solutions Company. As always, these webinars would not be possible without the participation of our sponsors and our Patreon members. So we thank them all for the contribution that they make to make sure that we're able to provide this service to our members. I'd also like to thank those of our partner association members who are attending today. Thank you very much. And please consider joining the EGF as a full-time member. We have various different member options. You can apply online on your screen at our website, www.eventgreening.co.za. And without any further ado, thank you for taking your time to be with us today. We had an incredible audience. At some point, we had 77 live participants in the webinar, which I think is quite a record, particularly in this day and age where we are also very busy. So thank you, Gavin. It was absolutely fantastic.